Hey there guys, alright, today we are back with another Historia Civilis video, this time the Battle of Cannae, 216 B.C.E. This is where the Carthaginians absolutely demolished the Roman army, despite being heavily outnumbered. I believe the number of the Roman military was upwards toward nearing 100,000 soldiers, and I think the Carthaginians were about half that. It was close to 2-to-1 odds, but not fully 2-to-1. Close enough. This battle pretty much sent Rome, the city, into complete chaos. Like, this was a terrifying battle for the Roman people. However, I don't think I heard one Roman historian. I cannot remember what the name of the battle was, but I heard that there was another battle in Roman history that is actually, he argues, is worse than Cannae, but I can't remember what it's called. Oops. Anyways, let's go ahead, dive right into the video. This is an older video from Historia Civilis.
The Battle of Cannae was the third and most decisive battle of the three major Italian engagements during the Second Punic War. This single event redefined Roman strategy for a generation and has fascinated generals ever since.
Yes.
If you look,
it has almost become a mythical battle. And in a sense, you could argue that, yeah, it's pretty mythical in the casualties that were sustained. Like, the casualties that the Carthaginians sustained compared to what the Romans sustained. Like, I think the Carthaginians lost less than 10,000 people in this battle. And the Romans lost that entire army of nearly 100,000 people.
Look at my two previous videos, which are about the Battle of the Trebia River and the Battle of Lake Trasimene. You'll notice that these were instances where Hannibal clearly outsmarted his opponents. The Romans noticed this too, but they wouldn't have called it smarts, they would have called it trickery. They hated trickery. To the Romans, the ideal battle took place on a flat surface with no obstacles around, where two armies could just come straight at each other and go at it.
So, this is actually an interesting point that he is making. Yeah, Romans, especially at this time, you could say, were more of, because this is where their strengths were. This is where the Roman military was at its best. Flat plains, the Roman heavy infantry is going to outclass any other infantry that it pretty much faces on a flat terrain. And what's funny about this is that Europe will revert to this strategy and form of fighting after the fall of Rome. This is how Anglo-Saxons fought. They fought, this is shield wall to shield wall combat, essentially.
They had reason to feel this way. They had some of the best heavy infantry in the known world. To them, it was all about the strength and grit of head-to-head fighting. After losing two entire armies in what the Romans would have considered an unfair fight, they were determined to force a battle on their terms. In order to make this battle truly decisive, each consul was given two standard-sized armies. These four combined armies totaled an unprecedented 86,000 men. Just like we've seen before, they were mostly heavy infantry, with only 6,400 cavalry. As the Romans marched south to meet Hannibal, they deliberately kept to flat, open land. They knew that they had the numerical advantage, and didn't want to get sucked into another one of Hannibal's tricks. Hannibal's casualties from the previous battle had replaced themselves yet again, with new Gallic allies coming over to his side after his victory. Gauls now made up a third of his army. In total, he had 50,000 men, consisting of 40,000 infantry and 10,000 cavalry.
Oh damn.
Going into the battle, Rome's strategy was pretty straightforward. Remember how at the Trebia, the Roman heavy infantry had unexpectedly broke through the Carthaginian center? And remember at Lake Trasimene, how the Roman heavy infantry had managed to break through the Carthaginians blocking the road? Roman strategy leading up to this battle was fundamentally about repeating this success.
Yes.
Their plan was to break through the center of the Carthaginian line.
I mean, and essentially, can you blame the Romans, though, for wanting to continue what has worked before? You really can't. You really can't blame people for wanting to do, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
And then overpower the two halves of the Carthaginian army with their superior numbers.
And yeah, divide and conquer, yeah.
To this end, Rome invested heavily in the center of their line. This had the added bonus of limiting their exposure to the elite Carthaginian cavalry who would be attacking on the wings. This plan isn't rocket science or anything, but you have to admit, based on past experience, it does make some sense.
Yep.
The only obvious alternative to this strategy would have been to have the Romans use their superior numbers to widen the line beyond the point where the Carthaginians could match them. Then they could have focused on the Carthaginian wings rather than on the center. This is a much more conventional strategy, but the only problem with it is that it leaves the infantry on the wings extremely exposed. So instead, they decided to attack up the center. Finally, they were thinking ahead, trying to mitigate the enemy cavalry. In order to fit even more men.
Yeah, and like, this is honestly one of the things that I love most about history, is these situations where it's like, you can't really fault the loser in a lot of these cases, in these kinds of battles of ancient history, because it's like, they make sense. A lot of these plans make sense, right? Rome does not have a good counter to Carthaginian cavalry, so what are they gonna, what can you do at this time? Mitigate the losses and focus on your strengths. And the Roman strength is their heavy infantry. And the plans that have worked before us have been when they break the center of the Carthaginian lines, and while their flanks are weaker. They're not doing the Alexander the Great strategy, who had extremely formidable cavalry, which is why he could do this and the Romans couldn't, where he just lengthened his front line, right? And he tried to just get a longer front line than Darius.
Men in the center of their line, the Romans formed up in large, narrow columns. Their cavalry was on the wings as usual, but their only job was to shield the infantry. The infantry on the wings' only job was to shield the infantry in the center. According to the plan, the center was where the battle would either be won or lost. The Carthaginian strategy going into the battle was eerily the opposite of the Roman one. Hannibal wanted to have a very thin center, with his elite African and Spanish infantry stacked deep on the wings. You'll see why in a minute.
Essentially, both sides are playing a gamble here. Like, this is not a set victory for Hannibal, right? Now, Hannibal's army, you could say, is... I don't know who is currently making up the army of the Romans, but what you've got in Hannibal's is essentially you've got an army, a lot of veterans, perhaps not that many veterans. The veterans of the Roman army are probably here in the center, right? So what you got here on the wings, then, are the newbies. And that's going to work better for Hannibal. But essentially, this is a risk on this is a major risk on Hannibal's side, right? He is betting on that his wings will be able to beat the wings of the Romans first, before the Romans can truly completely break the center, and then they can envelop. Battle of Cannae is essentially Rome gets encircled.
The Romans and the Carthaginians now formed up. The Romans left 10,000 of their 86,000 men to guard their camp, with the intent of launching a huge raid against the Carthaginian camp once the battle started. It seems to me to be a little overconfident to leave so many men behind, but their thinking was that the Carthaginians were pretty poorly supplied, which meant that a well-placed raid could potentially weaken them beyond their ability to fight. Again, it seems overconfident, but at least they're thinking ahead.
Yeah, you cannot really blame the Romans here on a lot of the strategy that they are making.
So, the remaining 76,000 Romans deployed in the formation I described earlier, with a river on their right. The Carthaginians deployed opposite them. Immediately, the Carthaginian cavalry charged the Romans hard on the right flank. The Roman cavalry was significantly outnumbered and outclassed, and received absolutely no support from the nearby infantry. It was a mess. Apparently somebody mistakenly gave the order to dismount just as the cavalry were charging in, leaving everybody totally unprepared to fight. In a matter of minutes, the Roman cavalry on the right were killed or driven off. One of the consuls may have been killed in this initial clash.
Oh,
it was a terrible way to start the battle.
It's not a good idea.
It's worth noting here that the consuls were commanding from the cavalry on the wings, and not from a central location behind the infantry. For some reason, this really bothers me. It's no wonder that the Romans were slow to adapt at the Trebia, and at Trasimene, and here at Cannae. Their consuls were more interested in playing soldier than commanding an army. My boy Caesar never would have pulled stuff like this. His HQ was always right behind the thick of the fighting, with messengers coming and going at all times. Even Hannibal here at Cannae put himself right behind his center, where his line was thinnest, so that he could quickly move men around if he needed to. According to their own plan, the Roman heavy infantry in the center were key to winning this battle. At least one consul should have been with them. It's idiocy, if you ask me. Anyway, the Roman horse on the right were in disarray. Then, the Carthaginian infantry advanced. For some reason, they formed a convex shape with their line as they advanced. This could have been a mistake, but it also could have been a way to exaggerate the weakness of their center. In other words, they could have been offering up an enticing target. While this was happening, the cavalry on the Roman left were playing cat and mouse with the Carthaginian cavalry. The Carthaginians kept on charging and retreating and charging and retreating, and neither side really wanted to fight. As the infantry from both armies finally met, the Romans set to work. Their heavy infantry in the center hit hard and began to push the enemy back. However, the Romans didn't know this, but Hannibal had ordered his center to deliberately give ground as needed. The Romans thought they were making progress, when actually they were walking right into a trap.
Yep.
At this point, the Carthaginians near the river had finally finished with the last of their opponents. They turned and charged all the way across the field to help their buddies on the other side. The Romans on this side were now outnumbered 3 or 4 to 1, and made a hasty retreat. By the way, and I hate to harp on this, with them went the other consul. We now have one consul dead and the other consul driven from...
Hold on, so the two commanders of the Roman armies here just fucking are gone now. That honestly, I didn't know that specific on the Battle of Cannae. That explains a lot.
The field. It kind of just makes me crazy. Meanwhile, the Roman infantry continued to advance right into the Carthaginian line. The center continued to slowly fall back as the wings held strong. Once the entire Roman line was fully committed, the Carthaginian infantry on the wings suddenly pivoted and charged inward. Simultaneously, the Carthaginian cavalry, free from any opposition, charged the Roman rear. Do you see this?
There it is.
It's a disaster. The Romans were now being squeezed from all directions and lost all cohesion. The army was now just a confused mess of humanity, pressed shoulder to shoulder with no room to fight. Now the battle was more like a mass execution. Of the 86,000 Romans, only 3,400 would escape. The 10,000 men left behind at the Roman camp would be captured, and everybody else.
Wow. What? They just let the 10,000 there didn't run away at all? They just
would be killed. The Carthaginians, on the other hand, lost only 8,000 total. If you're into kill-death ratios, that's 10 to 1. I cannot overstate how significant this loss was. It should have brought the state to its knees. There are estimates that Rome lost 20% of its adult male population on that day. To put that in some context, in World War I, Germany lost 6% of its adult male population over the course of 4 years.
Yep.
It's so awful, it's hard to imagine how they dealt with the loss. Yet somehow, miraculously, they carried on.
And they had to lower the recruitment age after this battle just to try and refill numbers.
Even more miraculously, after 13 long, hard years, Rome would actually win the war. That makes Cannae a testament to Hannibal's genius, but also a testament to Rome's cultural tenacity. There are very few states in world history that continued to demand unconditional surrender after such a loss.
Yeah.
Cannae also speaks to the limits of military power. Even after so many victories, Carthage couldn't project enough power to occupy captured territory or to take the Roman capital. In that respect, so long as his state didn't back him up, there was a limit to what Hannibal could accomplish.
Yep. Hannibal got pretty much fucked over by the state. Carthaginian state really could have won this war, and world history would be so different. But yeah, that was the Battle of Cannae, 216 BCE by Historia Civilis. I hope you guys enjoyed. I certainly did. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.